day out here in the Outer Banks. So welcome everybody to Wright Brothers National Memorial. How many of you were in that last program that we had indoors at 10 o'clock? Is anybody in there? All right, fresh group of newbies. So the program that we do in there 4 times a day is the big, nice, fun one. We have a $1.3 million replica in there. It's the most authentic replica in the world. The Smithsonian agrees that that is more authentic than the original one that they have. Our next talk in there will be at 12 o'clock. That's where we give you the entire story of Wilbur and Orville and how the airplane worked. We can play with it. We can show you how it flew. We talk about how they conquered flight. This talk we do a couple times every day. It's just a brief 15-20-minute program about what actually happened that morning of December 17, 1903. Now, since none of you are in that room yet, before we give any program at Wright Brothers or any national park, we always have to give some safety messages about a few things. So nobody's heard this one yet. So we have 2 very important concerns here at Wright Brothers, but there's also a third this weekend. Luckily, it went the other direction. Yesterday, we were watching Hurricane Erica very closely to see what it was going to do. It's heading off in a different direction, but it doesn't mean on Tuesday it might swing back up towards this way if it does what one of the computer models says. So if you're going to be here into the middle of next week, keep an eye on what's going on with that hurricane, tropical storm. But what these things are also doing, if you've been to the beach yet the last couple of days, you've noticed red flags. The water has been closed. It's been off limits for swimming because it is very dangerous out there. Haven't been to the beach yet to see if those red flags have been removed. But the reason those red flags are out there is because we've been under a very high rip current warning. Rip currents are very dangerous and they are very deadly. We get them out here every single day out in the Outer Banks. But when we're under a very high warning, we do not want anybody out there swimming. We tell you how to avoid a rip current because they do occur any single day out here. If you're out there on the beach and you look out to sea and you see a spot where there's absolutely no waves whatsoever and the water is a different color, do not swim there. It's a rip current. It's sucking back out to sea. It's a little hard to notice those just by doing that, but you'll notice you're in a rip current right away. All of a sudden you feel like you were being sucked out to the middle of the ocean. Now if this occurs, do not try to swim against it. It will suck out even the toughest Olympic swimmer that we've ever had on this planet. If you start to swim against it, you will tire yourself out. What we need every one of you to do if you get caught in a rip current is remain calm, look to your left and look to your right, and try to find where the normal ocean waves are. They're going to be right next to you. Once you find the waves, swim parallel to the shore. This is parallel. Get into the waves and let the ocean do all the work and bring you back in. It's the safest way to get out of a rip current. Grab a park newspaper inside, and the very front page you open up talks all about rip currents. Now, there's one big secret out here in the Outer Banks. We are called the graveyard of the Atlantic. It does not mean that it's going to happen to you if you get caught in one. It means that ships have been running aground for centuries out here. Blackbeard ran aground and met his demise. So it means that you can try to stand up 15 to 20 miles out to sea in the Outer Banks because of all the shallow sandbars. So if you feel like you're being sucked out to sea, just simply try to stand up also. Now the only big concern we have here every single day, Wright Brothers, is to do our best to stay on the sidewalks. We won't get mad at you if you go fly a kite or have fun or walk your dog. We just want everyone to be very well aware that this entire park is covered in prickly pear cactus and sand spurs. They are everywhere out here. Their mission in life is only to be stepped on. So if you or your 4-legged friends start to limp around, come back and see any one of us. As a National Park Ranger, we have very special authorization from Congress to give you some tweezers. You need to pull out anything that makes you limp around. So once again, welcome to Wright Brothers. So now, like I said, the big fun talk is inside there. The next one's at 12 o'clock, so you might feel like we're missing over a lot of important stuff. So we're just going to be talking about what happened that morning. But we like to give you a little background on why 2 bicycle mechanics from the middle of Ohio chose to come out here to the middle of nowhere in the Outer Banks. So how many of you are on a vacation this morning? That is what Wilbur and Orville were on as well. Wilbur and Orville are looking for the perfect place to fly. They just didn't throw a dart on a board to find this place. The first ingredient that Wilbur and Orville wanted for their experiments was obviously where we feel right this second. Wind. These are kites and these are gliders at first, so they need to find the windiest place they can in the country to continue their ideas of what a bird motion does in a kite. The bird they mimic is a simple turkey vulture. So they build a kite that does what they think a turkey vulture should do. As it starts to work, they know they need to find the best place to keep going. So as they start to research the windiest places in the country, all of their data points them towards Chicago, the windiest spot. Then they find out that Buffalo is next. Then Cleveland, Ohio is on that list. But the next 2 ingredients that the Wright brothers desperately want is as much sand as they can find. Because what goes up comes down really hard. And they want to find some isolation. They don't want anybody to watch what they're doing because it's just a hobby to them. Now in the summertime, we get about 200,000 people down here every single weekend. When Wilbur and Orville come down here, there's 150 people total that live in the Outer Banks. Very isolated spot, poor fishing villages. They write a letter down here to the postmaster because Kitty Hawk was number 6 in the windiest place list. In that letter, they just said, "What do you guys have down there?" The postmaster wrote back and said, "Kitty Hawk has wind and beaches, wide open spaces, some southern hospitality, and basically nothing else." They said, "That sounds exactly what we are looking for." So they roll the dice and choose Kitty Hawk. Now, your 4th grade teacher did not lie to you, and history did not lie. Wilbur and Orville flew at Kitty Hawk. You are standing in Kill Devil Hills right this second, so your smartphone did not lie to you either. This is Kitty Hawk, 1900. This is Kill Devil Hills, 2015. We renamed it Kill Devil Hills in the 50s because of politics, when they started actually naming these towns around here. As far as we are concerned, and you are concerned in history, you are standing right in the middle of Kitty Hawk, as the Wrights knew it. When they arrive in Kitty Hawk, it's 5 miles over there, the fishing village on the sound side. The Kitty Hawkers know it is absolutely insane to build a single structure facing the Atlantic Ocean. Why? Because of things like Erica. You do not face buildings facing the Atlantic Ocean. The Kitty Hawkers are smart enough to know that. So Wilbur and Orville arrive in the sound side. Then they have to walk 5 miles through the sand to get to right where we are standing. Now you can drive here from Dayton today in about 10 hours. It takes Wilbur and Orville a whole week to get here. 2 trains, 2 sailboats, and walk that final 5 miles to get down here. Now the one thing that we cannot see anymore, that we have a hard time picturing, is what the Outer Banks should look like. This whole landscape we have officially destroyed. We have killed the Outer Banks. There's not a single thing natural about the Outer Banks anymore. There should not be a single blade of grass anywhere in this 100+ mile stretch of barrier islands. There should hardly be any trees anywhere in the Outer Banks. So when we look around behind us, that is all we see. If you're inside the visitor center, just that little bit more of elevation, if you look out this window, you can kind of tell it's standing here. But if you look at every single tree in the Outer Banks, they are all basically the exact same height. Wilbur and Orville come down here, they arrive and they say this entire place looks like the Sahara Desert. Now, how many of you would want to go have a vacation in the Sahara Desert? So in order to have hotels and restaurants and golf courses and shops and fun things in the middle of Hurricane Alley, so we could rebuild them every year, we had to block the ocean. So if you've been to the beach yet, you notice you only have about 60 yards of sand. The entire Outer Banks should be the beach. It should be flat, all the way from the ocean, all the way across here to the sound. But you had to walk down this little tiny hill to get to the beach. We built all those little tiny hills in the 30s during the Depression, all the way from Virginia Beach down to Ocracoke to block the ocean. On a windy day like today, at high tide, we would be underneath ocean water right now historically. So once we block the ocean, all the trees and grass start to grow. We can build all those fancy shops and hotels and things. So imagine, as we talk about this, how this landscape should look like. Absolutely nothing but sand out here. Go to Jockey's Ridge State Park, a few miles down the road. This is what the entire Outer Banks should look like. So Wilbur and Orville, they first arrive in 1900, and it takes them 3 years of running and jumping and throwing each other off that hill right there. That hill is what we call Big Kill Devil Hill. Now Wilbur and Orville don't have a high school diploma between the two of them. They have no formal education, absolutely no money. They're teaching themselves out of books and trial and error. They get farther in 3 summers, just a couple of months, than this entire planet had ever gotten in its existence in flight. They conquer what we call roll, pitch, and yaw. Now, like I said, we're going over that very quick, so come inside and we'll talk about that more at 12 o'clock. Roll, pitch, and yaw is how every single thing on this planet flies today. It's the magical secret of flight. Roll, pitch, and yaw. They discovered that in 1902, running and jumping and throwing each other off that hill 1,000 times. That monument on top of that hill right behind us, as we look over there, is the largest and only monument in the history of the United States and the National Park Service ever built for a human being who is still alive. There's not another national monument in this country ever built for a living human being, except that one right there, where Wilbur and Orville taught us to fly. So after 1902, they have figured out what we call control in an airplane. They know it can stay up there, but they know that this isn't how we're going to fly. So they need some power. So they go back, and every single engine maker in the world tells them that the engine they want an engine that weighs 200 pounds and gets 8 horsepower. Every single engine maker in the world tells them it's impossible. And then they build it themselves. Very first aluminum engine ever built. Then they build the very first propellers by hand, carving them with a draw knife in their bicycle shop. So now they have what we call thrust. they arrive out here the very next year, 1903. It's taken us since the beginning of time to figure out what these two bicycle mechanics have done in just a few short summers. When they arrive in September of 1903, Wilbur and Orville built the airplane in Dayton, but they never tested it. They built it and they took it right back apart, threw it in crates, and shipped the whole thing down here. So they've never even tried to turn it on once when they arrive in September. Now when they get here in September, they turn that airplane on for the first time, and it vibrates so much, the engine, that it breaks and spits out little pieces about that big. Now anytime something broke off the engine or the propeller shafts, they originally were hollow like this, they vibrated so much that they ripped right in half. So every time this occurred, there's only one spot in the world they trusted to work on something off the engine. 750 miles one way that way. It's the bicycle shop in downtown Dayton. So if something that big breaks, they can fix cloth, they can sew up, they can fix pieces of wood, but if it's metal, one of them walks 5 miles, takes 2 sailboats, 2 trains, arrives home a week later, works on it for a week, comes back down, a week later they turn it on, and 5 days later it breaks again. One of them goes back. They do this for 4 whole months. The most ironic part of this entire story is we all need to look at that tree line right over there. If you look at that tree line, you see a triangle sticking out of the top of it. Anybody want to take a guess what that triangle is?
Lowe's Home Improvement.
It's the world's largest hardware store. And it's a Lowe's. You can imagine, Wilbur and Orville literally walked right through the middle of Lowe's to go back 700 miles just to get something that big to put on. So they never wanted to fly in December. They just couldn't do it because of all the bad luck. Now there's one thing that Wilbur and Orville are, and it's family men. They know that they have to get home in time for the holidays. They've already missed Thanksgiving, most of the holiday season. So they know they leave here as heroes or they go home as failures because they are not going to miss Christmas. It's the most important thing to Wilbur and Orville. So finally, on the morning of December 14th, they have had enough of being out here. So they flip a coin in the air. Wilbur wins the coin toss. Wilbur says we fly off that hill. So they carry all 605 pounds of that airplane, drag it up halfway up that hill. Wilbur, they take the rail up there, put it on the little rail, and as it starts to go down the rail, it gets stuck. It's hung up. Starts kicking in the sand like this, breaks forward, takes about a 2-second flight and slams into the sand and breaks the front end of it. Now they can easily fix this because it's just pieces of wood and cloth, so it takes them 3 days to work on it. And as they're sitting there for those 3 days, luckily they think of this next, because if they hadn't, not a single one of us would be standing right here this second. They suddenly realize that, wait a minute, airplanes cannot come off of hills. They know this. Now don't feel bad if you're one of those hundreds of thousands of people that come in the park every summer and you tell your family, look at that hill, that's where the Wrights flew right off the top of that thing. Now don't feel bad, I see some of you smiling, you know you did that today. But how many of you have ever gone to an airport and your airplane took off of a hill? That's not what we ever do. They know to ever get credit, an airplane's got to take off on flat ground, get into the sky, and land at a point at the very same elevation, or it's just another glider. So 3 days later, it's younger brothers Orville's turn, because they are just taking turns from that coin toss. They decide they need to fly down here on flat ground. So you can look at these 2 buildings right behind us. The one closest to us is their hangar. The one on the far side is their living room. Wilbur and Orville stayed in canvas tents the first couple of years they were out here. You can tell it's very windy. Imagine nothing but sand out here and mosquitoes. You don't want to do that very long. So they built this nice luxury over here in 1902. Now as they're sitting in that hangar that morning, they wake up on the morning of December 17th. We got a little bit of living history right this second. Look at the flag. The flag is blowing from the northeast today. That is the predominant wind direction in the wintertime. It's called a nor'easter. So that's why we are facing this way. So they need that wind because that's what's producing the lift. Stick your hand out your car window and start going like this. Pops right up. That's why they need to fly into the wind. That morning they wake up and it's about a 30-mile-per-hour northeast wind. Right now we've got about 9 miles per hour. You can see a big difference. They also wake up that morning with the wind chill. It is 6 degrees outside. Perfect conditions for flight. They don't know that, but it is perfect with the air density to get this thing into the sky. So they decide this is the morning we do it. So they know they need to carry all 605 pounds of that airplane from that hangar right over here to this rail. Look at this rail right here. The sand is too soft for wheels to be on the airplane. They just dig into the sand. So Wilbur and Orville built this simple rail. It is 4 15-foot 2x4s flipped on their side, and on top of it is a strip of metal. It's very simple. Then the airplane sits on top of it by bicycle hubs. These are bicycle guys. This whole design is not a catapult, it's just a runway for the propellers to push it down through the sand. This cost Wilbur and Orville $4 to build. 1, 2, 3, 4. Their closest competition in the United States is a man named Samuel Langley. If you drive from here to DC, half the buildings are named after Langley. He was the chief scientist of the country, one of the smartest men. He'd been working on this half of his life. In the same year, the United States government and the Smithsonian had dumped over $800,000 into Langley's operation. He built a houseboat to launch his airplane into the sky, cost the taxpayers $50,000, and drowned the pilot almost instantly on the first flight. Wilbur and Orville did it for $4. Shows us government versus private spending still today. So as this airplane sits on this rail sits here in the sand, they carry it all the way from that hangar over here. Now Wilbur and Orville weigh 140 pounds. They can't carry a 605-pound airplane by themselves. They need a little bit of help. So if we didn't see all these trees right here, if it was natural, about 2 blocks that way, we would see the Kill Devil Hills Life-Saving Station. So what are life-saving stations? We call them the Coast Guard today. They're dotted every few miles up and down the peninsula here, the island, because every time one of those ships run aground in the graveyard, they row out there and try to save whatever they can. When they're not busy saving lives, we call them the first flight crew in human history. So Wilbur and Orville, when they need help, they put a little red flag on the roof of their living quarters. They climb up there and hammer it onto the roof. The life-saving station members saw that. 3 of them walked over that morning. Now there's 2 other guys here, a 16-year-old boy and a lumberman from Manio Island. Between the 5 of them and Wilbur and Orville, they carry all 605 pounds of that airplane and put it right there at the end of the rail. Now it is Orville Wright's turn to try to fly into history. But Wilbur has to do something as well. So when you're inside in the auditorium, look at the airplane. Look at the engine. The engine sits right here on the right wing. It's 180 pounds. Orville sits right here on the left wing. He's 140 pounds. So there's a 40-pound difference between the engine and the Wright brothers. So the whole airplane does this. It sinks into the sand. It's not meant for the land, it's meant for the sky. So one brother has to physically hold the wing and run down the sand with it. They know it'll stay in the sky if it ever takes off because they made the right wing an extra 4 inches on the left side. You'll never notice it, but the right wing is that much longer than the left. Keep the engine up. But until it does, one brother has to hold it. So as Orville's on his stomach and Wilbur's got the wing, they soon realize they've got a big problem. The Wright brothers' favorite thing, other than airplanes, is taking pictures of themselves. They love photography. They have a very expensive camera for this time frame in history. They bring the very first camera any human being had ever seen to the Outer Banks. Now as they're standing there, they set their camera up and they put a little bulb in one man's hand. They grab his name is John Daniels. He's just standing there, one of those Coast Guard guys. They say, "John, you think you could take a photo for us since you're just sitting there?" And John looked back and said, "Well, I have never seen a camera in my entire life. What do I do?" They set it up, they focused it, they put the little bulb in his hand attached to the shutter, they pointed it at the end of the track where they thought the airplane might take off. They said, "John, if you see it do a single thing, squeeze that bulb as tight as possible." Now we don't care if it explodes, cartwheels, goes to the moon, or anything. Just squeeze that bulb if you see something happen. And John said, "Oh yeah, that's simple." So he's standing there, the camera's about 10 feet behind everybody in the grass over there. The Wright brothers shake hands. All the witnesses say it's one of the longest handshakes anyone had ever seen. Probably thought they'd never see each other again. Orville's on his stomach, Wilbur's on the wing, the airplane is turned on, the propellers are spinning. It's the first time in 4 months something has not broken right off of it. Now the airplane starts to slowly move down this rail at 6 miles an hour. Now where every one of you are standing right this second is where Wilbur is holding on to the wing as it's slowly moving down the rail. Suddenly, it hits that 30-mile-per-hour wind. Orville pulls back on the elevator and it jumps into the sky. We stand right here at this rock and do this program because this boulder in front of you is one of the most hallowed sites on planet Earth's existence. This rock is the exact spot, the first takeoff point for the first flight in human history. Think about that for just a second. The ground does not get much more hallowed than this. We can stand here, literally do this program, any given point of any given day. We will have Navy supersonic jets scream right over the top of us, tip their wings. Army helicopters land out here, and most of us probably flew to get to where we are today. We think flight was so long ago, it was 112 years ago. There's a woman that just turned 116 in downtown Brooklyn 3 weeks ago. We could not fly one living human lifetime ago. Look at where we are right now, right this second. This airplane lifts into the sky. It goes down the beach a whole 12 seconds and 120 feet and slams where that boulder is, right there. Now, Wilbur and Orville, 12 seconds, that seems like nothing. 120 feet, the wings of the jumbo jet that we used to get down here at the airport are twice as long as that today. But that is 12 seconds that changed the course of human history forever. It takes since the beginning of time to take that 12-second flight. It takes 66 years to land on the moon. We flew past Pluto 3 weeks ago. 12 seconds was pretty important. They carry that airplane back over here, and they go over to John, who's standing right there, and they say, "John, did you get that picture?" John looks back, and he's got that deer in the headlight look, and he says, yes, no, maybe. I'm not really sure what just happened. John is so shocked at what he just saw, because he just saw impossible happen in front of him. He forgot to squeeze the bolt. That is not what the Wrights ever wanted to hear that morning, so they throw John right off the camera. Now you see we have 4 stones out here. Wilbur and Orville did 4 flights that morning. Now they're taking turns. We've got Orville, Wilbur, Orville are these first 3 stones. They have no idea what they're doing. They're learning to fly. So they're putting too much pitch on the elevator, which is making the airplane do this. We call it porpoising. It's like a dolphin jumping out of the water. Now that 4th flight, Wilbur does the exact same thing, the first couple hundred feet. Suddenly, he stops. The airplane makes a nice, smooth flight, 2.5 football fields down there on the 4th flight, 852 feet. Now, Wilbur and Orville, we know this thing will fly 9 miles. We can take it out of the room right now, and we'll fly it across the country 9 miles at a time. Wilbur and Orville want to go 4 miles that day. We've had lunch at a restaurant called the Black Pelican, or seen it yet while you've been down here. It was a telegraph station in 1903. They want to fly from this exact spot 4 miles, park it right in front of the telegraph, and send it out and say that they conquer flight. So as they're getting ready for the 5th flight, remember it's 6 degrees out there, it's 30-mile-per-hour wind, they just wanted to take a break to warm up, talk about what they've done. They're standing in the hangar, and they turn around, and they see the airplane flipping and tumbling down the sand. They forgot to do what every good pilot knows today. In a windstorm, you tie your airplane down to something. When they look back, the airplane is flipped and tossed, and when it's done tumbling, it hits so hard it destroys every single thing on it that they need. It would never fly again until Armstrong took a piece of it to the moon. We have that piece in the visitor center. It hung in the Smithsonian when it used to be in the ceiling higher than it would ever fly. Now as they run over to that airplane, they don't know where John is. John had jumped in the thing for some reason to try to be a hero. John got flipped and tossed so far that morning that when they thought they got to him, they thought he was going to be dead. But when they found him, he was undamaged and pulled him out, and for the rest of John's life, he told everyone that he took the 5th flight in human history in an airplane, which is very debatable. Then he told anyone that would ever listen to him, well, I was the very first victim that ever survived an airplane crash. If we look at the official history books today, John is given credit as the first human being to ever survive an airplane crash. Wilbur and Orville know they've done enough for that season. They got to get home for Christmas. They walk down, send the telegraph, leave the next day. Surprises us that they take a whole month to develop the pictures they took that morning, because they love photography so much. They have no idea what's on those photos, and they start looking at the very few handful of glass negative pictures they took that day. Found this. What is this? This is the photo that John Daniels accidentally took. Only picture that John Daniels would ever take his entire life. So if you accidentally take a picture, please make sure it is a very good one. We're still talking about it 112 years later. Many historians still think this might be the most reproduced photo ever taken by any human being ever. Just a few feet right behind you. So everything I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so, I can show you in this picture. The first is look at the little rail at the bottom. We've all seen this photo, but they say picture's worth 1,000 words. So look at the rail. You can see the little wooden dolly is well in front of the airplane, which shows us that the airplane took off with the part of the rail, where this rock is. Now, if you don't believe us how cold it was that morning, look at the very bottom. The sand is not shiny and glossy. Ice is. Those are frozen puddles of water underneath the airplane. You can see that little bench. Now the bench makes sense, because now you know that's what the wing is resting on. What's neat about the photos, if you look next to the bench, you see a rectangle of untouched sand. That rectangle is actually the wing. As a whole thing is spare bicycle parts. We can take it apart and get two of their bikes out of this thing pretty much. Then you got the dry battery, because there's no spark plugs or anything. They got to fire up the magneto with it. But most importantly, we see Orville flying. That's very important. But it's Wilbur. Look at Wilbur. Look at his feet. You can follow his footprints all the way back to the bench. There are two aviation photos that we care about that show footprints in the sand and the dust. These are one small step, and it takes its beginning of time to make them. We only wait 66 years later to see a giant boot print in the dust, and it's Armstrong's on the moon. So this photo shows two things. The first is the birth of aviation. We all know that. We all see that. Now, where you are standing in this hallowed ground every single day, we see people come in here, and they stare at this rock, and we ask them if they're all right, and they look back at us weeping. Because they've waited their whole life to see this spot. Every single day, we see people just like that. So they gladly pay their $4. Some of you were drugged here today by somebody just like that. So you paid your $4. But ultimately, we were curious to see where the birth of aviation was. This photo also shows a death. It's just that we don't see it anymore. To be honest, if you look at this and you see a death in this picture, we don't remember. This photo shows the death of impossibility. This was accidentally captured and shows perfectly in time at 10:35 a.m. that morning. Two average, everyday humans like all of us, two bicycle mechanics, finally took the word impossible and forever redefined impossibility as meaning it hasn't been figured out yet. Their true legacy is not airplanes, it's eternal hope. So this rock that we're standing next to is three things. This photo showed a birth. So this is the birthstone of aviation. Every pilot in the world calls this the Blarney Stone of aviation. They all believe it to be good luck to come out here and hug it, touch it, give it a kiss. If you're not a pilot and you've ever wanted to maybe kiss Orville, Earhart, Lindbergh, Yeager, Armstrong, Aldrin, or anybody else you can think of, some of us have personally stood out here when their lips hit this thing. So come over here and give it a kiss if you want to. But the most important thing about this rock is the last thing I talked about in this picture. If this photo shows a death, what's customary in society to do when something dies? You put a rock on top of it. So this rock is the gravestone of impossibility. So what that simply tells us is that every single person standing here right this second, the next time somebody comes up to you and tries to say something is impossible, and that means cancer, disease, illness, life, school, finances, and every single day of everyone's lives, somebody loves to tell you something is impossible. So the next time that occurs, you simply say, laugh a little bit, now wait a minute. That ranger and that wind talked a lot. But when he said that this is the gravestone of impossibility, I realized that nothing is impossible. It's been buried right in this spot since 1903, that morning on December 17th. So don't let any single human being ever tell you something is impossible again. If you guys have any questions, please come up and ask them. If not, please come into that talk at 12 if you want to see how that really fun, cool airplane works.